Now today on The Big Story, violent clashes continue to spread across Hong Kong. Stay on to find out the latest situation. Bomb goes off in a downtown residential area. Find out more. And why it's not an easy ride for food delivery riders and ride-hailing drivers. Hello and welcome to The Big Story, where we discuss the top news of today and explain why it matters. I'm Haryanto Diman, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. Fresh clashes erupted in Hong Kong earlier today as netizens appealed for help for hundreds of protesters still in Polytechnic University. Telegram group chats were abuzz with calls for people to help divert police attention from the Hung Hom campus so that protesters could evade police arrest upon leaving the university. Anti-government protesters have been locked in a standoff with police at Polytechnic University since Sunday. They threw petrol bombs and bricks from improvised catapults, while the police retaliated with tear gas and water cannon. We'll cross over live to our Hong Kong correspondent right now, Claire Huang, for the latest. Claire, hi.
Hi, Haryanto.
Hi, Claire. If you could tell us, what's the latest situation between the standoff with police and the protesters?
Hundreds of protesters, many of them said to be injured, remain trapped in Polytechnic University, or PolyU at the moment. They've tried unsuccessfully 3 times so far today to escape amid the thick smoke of tear gas, because the police have been firing rounds of tear gas using water cannon and so on. So one group of protesters are now blocking roads and battling police in Tsim Sha Tsui near PolyU in an attempt to divert police attention away from the campus. And another group is trying to advance to PolyU through Jordan to save those trapped. Now, police have said that they did not raid the Hung Hom campus that is next to the Cross Harbour Tunnel. They said they did not prevent protesters from leaving the campus despite calls for protesters to do so. And at around 2 p.m., the police said they have arranged for Red Cross volunteers to go into PolyU to tend to those injured. Now, this comes after they nabbed this morning dozens of first aid volunteers who helped the protesters. Now, the police said those arrested were found not to be medically trained nor certified. So the working crowd is starting to knock off. And in the past hours earlier, there have been calls for people to head to PolyU vicinity as well as Tsim Sha Tsui. Some parents and school heads have made emotional pleas to the authorities because they say that the children are caught up in the PolyU police siege. So they're asking for those students to be allowed to leave unharmed. And some about 20 secondary schools principals have urged the government to arrange for them to go into the university campus, saying they believe that 100 children were trapped among the hundreds of protesters there.
Yeah, Claire, the situation really does sound quite serious there. Now let's focus on a ruling by the High Court today. Now the High Court today ruled that the mask ban introduced under emergency powers last month is unconstitutional. What does this mean for the authorities now?
So basically, the judicial review found that the anti-mask law is incompatible with the basic law, that restrictions the new face mask law imposes on people's fundamental rights are more than what is necessary. The High Court said that the judgment does not mean that the law is objectionable or unconstitutional. It stressed, I quote, "We consider it to be clear that the measure adopted exceeds what is reasonably necessary to achieve the aim of law enforcement, investigation and prosecution of violent protesters, even in the prevailing turbulent circumstances in Hong Kong, and that it fails to strike a reasonable balance between the societal benefits promoted and the inroads made into the protected rights," unquote.
And Claire, of course, for the first time as well, Chinese soldiers were sent out to the streets to help with cleanup efforts on Saturday. That seemed pretty harmless, but it attracted some criticism. Can you tell us why?
I think there is a fear that, one part of why this movement has grown is because of fears of China and how it is tightening its grip on Hong Kong. So with the PLA, with the troops coming out to, do cleanup, there are also fears that, does it signal that it is okay to do this in Hong Kong territory, because it's one country, two systems, so it's supposed to be clear cut and supposed to be independent of each other in that sense. So for them to come to Hong Kong grounds, soil to do this, does it mean that it raises a lot of questions and a lot of doubts, among protesters and among people.
Now, thank you, Claire, for giving us the latest on the situation in Hong Kong. And of course, as always, do stay safe. Now, you can follow Claire on Twitter and our website, straitstimes.com, to be updated with the latest on the Hong Kong protest. Up next, the area around the former site of popular nightclub Zouk was a hive of activity this morning. Roads were blocked off and residents living nearby had to be evacuated. That's because a 50-kilogram World War II aerial bomb was discovered at a construction site. The Singapore Armed Forces Explosive Ordnance Disposal Team was brought in to conduct a controlled explosion. The first explosion in Jiak Kim Street was heard at 11 a.m. Slight tremors were felt nearby and passers-by said there was a smell of explosives in the air. Earlier at 7 a.m., residents at condominiums nearby were seen walking out of their homes following police instructions to vacate their units from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. About 600 residential units were affected and roads around the area were closed to traffic by 9:30 a.m. This morning, and he is now here in the studio to tell us more. Welcome, Clement.
Hi.
Now, Clement, this is the first time that you're here on TBS?
Yes, it is.
Welcome. Now, Clement, you were at the site this morning, and of course, the latest update is that the bomb has been safely detonated at 4:35 p.m. What is the situation like now? Have the residents returned to their homes?
The latest that we know is that the relevant authorities are still checking out the structural integrity of the buildings surrounding the area. So BCA, PUB, Singapore Powers, etc. are checking the drainage, are checking whether the condos are okay. The residents have yet to be informed by the police via WhatsApp that they are allowed back into the area. And so we'll just wait till the dust have properly settled and then we'll get more information.
And the site, you were at the site this morning, of course, that's when the operation was carried out. If you could tell us a bit more about what went on this morning.
So at about 7:30, police, about 20 to 30 police officers can be seen around the area. They set up a cordon about 200 meters around the area. Residents were told to vacate by 8 a.m. By 7:50, some of them by 7:15 even. Some of them were already trickling out of their condos, getting ready to get out of the area. So we were at this vantage point quite high up in the building, and we could see that the SAF soldiers were setting up sandbags. From a photo that one of the condo residents sent in, we could also see that they have constructed a concrete block around the explosive. So at about 11 was when we heard the first detonation, could see dust smoke. But from what we know, it wasn't properly detonated then, so more operations were required, and at 4:35 was the final one where it was finally finished.
And on top of that as well, you also spoke to some residents. Were they worried? How did they react?
So we had quite a wide range of responses. One of the more serious ones being someone who had packed an overnight bag. She decided to go to a nearby hotel to check in to get out of the affected area. She said some of her friends have also flown overseas over the weekend to avoid what was happening today. But there were also others, especially the tourists in the hotel nearby, from the UK, from Israel, who said they have had quite a few experiences with these things back at home. And so they were not too worried. They said the soldiers should have it under control and they would just wait for the latest updates to think of what the next step should be.
Right. Thank you, Clement, for coming on to the show. Now, we are certainly relieved that the operation went smoothly. Now, for more on this, you can visit our website at straitstimes.com. And now on to what's trending, where Dylan will share with us what's buzzing in the internet verse. Over to you, Dylan.
Thanks, Haranto. It's time for What's Trending. Spotted at Takeout Market on Saturday, David Beckham enjoying a plate of mee goreng. Beckham was joined by local food blogger On Ko, better known as Chubby Hubby. Beckham was also seen checking out some stalls at the market. Now, according to his Instagram, he was in town for business, not pleasure, with Avenue Singapore, Marina Bay Sands and Marquee Nightclub. Hope you enjoyed the mee goreng, David. Next up, on one day in April next year, be prepared to clear your own rubbish. That's when cleaners across the island will be given a day off. Now why? Clean SG Day aims to raise public awareness about the 21,000 tonnes of rubbish generated island-wide daily. For instance, Singapore employs an army of 58,000 cleaners to clear up places like housing estates and walkways 3 times a day. What do you think of Clean SG Day? Let us know in the comments. And finally, wedding bells for Taiwanese model Lin Chiling and Japanese actor-singer Akira on Sunday. Tainan was chosen as the official wedding venue as it is her father's hometown. Mayor Huang Wei-che said that the authorities decided to treat the wedding as though the city was giving Lin away and gifted Akira's family with items linked to traditional rites such as oil, salt, vinegar and tea. All the best to the happy couple. That's all for What's Trending today. If you've seen a story you want to share, link it in the comment section below. Back to you, Haranto.
Thank you, Dylan. Now on to our last segment. More than 100 university students have spoken out in support of food delivery riders who are affected by the recent ban on electric scooters. In a letter sent to media, the students highlighted the food delivery workers' plight, including irregular incomes and lack of formal workers' associations. They urged the government to continue engaging and make appropriate revisions to the policy, and to food delivery companies to consider increasing commissions to offset the loss of income caused by delivery workers switching to slower modes of transport. With us now in the studio is Yuan Xin, who wrote an insight piece on Sunday on the gig economy. Welcome, Yuan Xin.
Hi.
Now, Yuan Xin, you wrote that gig economy work, it's not an easy ride. If you could tell us why.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely when the gig economy first came, flourished in Singapore 5 years ago, it started coming into the Singapore scene. It seems like a very attractive job option for many people. There are low barriers to entry and it offers to pay a lot more than other low-wage jobs like being a cleaner or being a security officer, right? But the structure of it is such that it tends to be unstable, and also, as you can see from that recent e-scooter ban, right, it's very prone to disruptions, whether this is because of regulatory issues or it could be business issues. So, for instance, when Grab acquired Uber last year, right, so many drivers who had previously earned some commissions and incentives said that this amount had dropped. Yeah. And when Honest Bee, it wasn't really doing well after a year or so, even though at first it came on with such like promise and so on, right? So it left around like 500 delivery riders in the lurch. So the very nature of the gig economy is such that because in this landscape, it's a bit unpredictable.
Yeah. It's the unpredictability, right, that makes it very difficult. Now, Yensin, also in your story, you talked about a survey that was conducted, and this survey polled 200 people. What was the most startling revelation of that survey?
Yeah, so we wanted to, why we did this survey was also because we wanted to find out more about how blue-collar gig economy workers were doing, and also more about their socio-economic profile, because there's no available public data on their income background, And we found out that actually 1 of every 2 of such delivery riders and private hire drivers came from they had a per capita monthly household income, per capita income of less than 1,005, which puts them in the bottom third of Singapore's workers. So it just means that in terms of household income, they're at the lowest 30%. Yeah. So even though many of them are earning more than their previous jobs, they still find it a struggle to make ends meet. And of course, you can't blame the gig economy for not paying them the wages, because it shows that because they come from this low income background, they are more vulnerable, right? Yeah. So in the event of unexpected disruptions, whether it be business or regulatory disruptions, right? You will find that it could be a more vulnerable and marginalized class of workers that get hit by this.
Yeah, and focusing now on the food delivery rider or ride-hailing drivers. Now, can you share with us why a person, say, can be stuck in such positions?
Yeah, I mean, the gig economy is actually meant for people who want to do this maybe as a temporary measure, right? Like you're in between jobs or you're a student and you need more pocket money. But I think what many academics have highlighted over the years is that it is not sustainable as a full-time job option, especially if you're looking at like a 4 to 5 year time horizon.
Right.
And it's primarily because of the lack of labor protection. So, for instance, you don't get CPF contributions except for, I think, MediSave, right? So people need CPF to save for housing, for retirement security.
Right.
So even though these workers could be getting more in the short term, the lack of such reserves in the future could also hinder the social mobility, for instance, right? And also many of them that we spoke to work very long hours, like 8 a.m. to 2 a.m., for instance, because they need to catch the peak hour timings where they can earn more incentives. So even though they take breaks in between, there's not much time they have left over to invest in like skills training or looking for other alternatives. So then you find that they're kind of lured by the immediacy of this, but there isn't much planning for the future.
So there is a myriad of factors that could possibly render them to be stuck in such positions. Now, thank you, Yen Sun, for the invaluable insights. You can read more about Yen Sun's piece on the gig economy on our website, straitstimes.com. Now, those were the top stories for the day. For more news and videos, you can visit our Straits Times website. Once again, I'm Haryanto. See you tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.